Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a story time. I'm going to get on to the story of a really tragic time in not only my life, but my entire family's life. So this was on September 2nd, 2014. There was two towns. One was called Roswell, New Mexico, and the other one was Carlsbad, New Mexico. And I was living in Roswell, New Mexico for a little bit, and I started going to beauty school. And when I was going to beauty school, I was almost done, found out that I was pregnant with Zaylin, my youngest, and I just thought it would be easier to just move back home. So I would commute back and forth for beauty school, and I would take Aaliyah, my oldest, with me because we had an established sitter that was already there in Roswell. So she would go with me every morning. I'd go to school, and then I would get out of school, pick her up from the sitter, and then go home. And it was like an hour drive from Roswell to Carlsbad, both ways. I remember we had just got a new car, and it was only like a few months old, like 3 months old maybe. On September 2nd, I left, and at that time, I was 7 months pregnant. So on the way to school, and I was coming out of Artesia, it's a little town in between Carlsbad and Roswell. And I remember coming out of Artesia, and I was almost in Roswell, almost. I was like the halfway point between Artesia and Roswell. I remember coming up on a tractor, and you know those big tractors that have those long blades on the very back of it. And I remember seeing it, and I remember looking into my rear view mirror, or not my rear view mirror, this mirror over here on the door. Is that what I call the rear view mirror too? I don't know. I remember looking into that mirror and thinking like, oh, okay, there's like an SUV coming up. And I remember it was a white SUV. It was a Ford Explorer. And I remember looking at it and I'm thinking like, oh, I better speed up and get while I so I could pass this tractor, because he wasn't on the side of the road. He was on halfway on the shoulder and halfway in the right lane, which to this day I don't understand why he was that way. I went to like speed up, and by this time I'm already going about 75, maybe 80 miles an hour to get in front of this SUV, because he's in the passing lane, so he's flying. So by the time I look back to the front, I see the tractor in front of me, and all I remember is just grabbing onto the wheel, and I don't remember anything. Later on, I found out that supposedly I still turned into the passing lane, but I overcorrected because I probably turned too much. And when I overcorrected, I went around the blade, came in front of the tractor, and clipped his front tire, and I started rolling at like 80 miles an hour. And I rolled my car about 6 times that I could count. I remember just rolling, and I remember just at the time I didn't remember any of this. It took me a while, but I had flashbacks and dreams and nightmares and stuff like that, and everything started to piece together what was missing. And I remember as soon as I think I skid on the driver's side for a little bit, and then it started rolling after it kind of caught like a little bit of like momentum, I guess you would say. I don't know. I remember just seeing the highway road on the side of my face because we were skidding on the side. And I think once I kind of like I skid like that, came to the shoulder, and that's when I started rolling. I remember just seeing my hands just kind of like go everywhere. And I don't know how, but I was thinking, okay, I need to keep my hands, and I got my hands and I held myself right around my stomach really, really tight. And I made sure to hold so tight that I just try to hold on so tight. And I remember just pushing my legs into the seat so that they weren't hitting, because I could already feel something like on my legs. And I thought, oh my God, like I broke my leg already. This has always been my fear, to like flip a car and it roll. Like, am I going to land upside down? Like, what's going to happen? So at one point I catch air. And I remember I'm like, oh my God, we're in the air. Like, what's going on? And I didn't know there was an embankment right there. And it was pretty deep. And we go down into the embankment, and once it lands inside the embankment, I just see half the car go boom, straight down to the seat. So the whole passenger side was squished down. I'll put a clip or a picture right here. And it was smashed all the way down, and I kept thinking like, God, please, 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 please let us make it out alive. Let Aaliyah be okay. Let us land right side up. I was terrified. And so then I remember just seeing the sky and the ground, the sky and the ground, and the sky and the ground every time we were flipping. And I remember as soon as it stopped, we landed right side up. And I'm like, thank God. And I remember the dust just settled. And I remember like pushing stuff off of me. And when I like finally kind of like came to, it was the airbag. And I'm thinking, okay, like this, like shit, this really happened. And so I'm sitting there and I could just see the dust settling. And I'm just like looking at the inside of the car, not thinking it's that bad at the time. I think my adrenaline was like kind of like, I didn't know what was going on. And I remember just hearing Aaliyah say, Mommy. And I'm like, oh my God. I didn't want to look in the back seat. I didn't want to look in the back seat because I didn't know if she was okay or not. And I remember just looking back there and she was fine, but her car seat was tilted just a little bit. And as soon as I saw her, she was fine. I could visually see she was fine. Her just car seat was tilted a little bit from just, shaking back and forth. And I remember, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. And I remember just trying to open the door and it would not open. And I'm just like hitting it and hitting it and hitting it. And finally it busts open. And I crawl out and there's weeds everywhere. And I'm like crawling out, trying to get out of the car. And I get out of the car. And as soon as I open the door and I stand up, there's people already coming down into the embankment who have already pulled over. The guy in the tractor already got out of his tractor. And they're like, oh my God, you're alive. And I'm like thinking, like, what are they talking about? Like, yeah, I'm alive. Like, what are you talking about? But I didn't know what the car looked like. And so I tried to get to the back driver's side door and I'm yanking it open and they're like, stop, stop, stop. And I'm like, no, I need to get my daughter. And I'm like yanking it out and I go to like lean over and there was shit everywhere. There was shit everywhere. We were in the process of moving because I remember I was in between staying at my mom's house and moving into the new house and going to school. So I just had junk everywhere. I had all my supplies for school. I had all kinds of stuff. I had Aaliyah's like, diaper bags and things like that. So I had junk everywhere. And we had like a tub of clothes because like I said, we were in between houses and trying to get stuff situated. There was stuff everywhere in my car. And I remember trying to like kind of crawl over her because we had this huge stereo in the back seat. And I thought the whole time it's going to beat her up. Like that thing is going to be smacking her around. And it was a big stereo. It wasn't just like no little boom box. Like it was a stereo with the speakers and like like the whole shebang. And I remember just leaning over and I just felt my stomach on fire. I'm going to lose the baby. I'm 7 months pregnant. What the heck is going to happen? This lady, she was really sweet. She had already came on over to me and she asked if I was okay. She was touching me and she was trying to get me to look at her, but I was just so like all over the place. I couldn't focus. And so I said, can you just get her out, please? Just get her out. And she got her out, unbuckled her and everything. And she held onto Aaliyah. And the thing is I think Aaliyah doesn't really remember a whole lot. She had mentioned a couple things a couple weeks after it all happened. But I think she was asleep through most of it. And I think that's kind of what saved her life too. Because, when they say your body is just relaxed, you get through an accident better, I guess you could say. I don't know. So I tell her to get Aaliyah out of the car. And as she's doing that, I like look down and I see like hair on the floor. And I'm like, that's my hair. And I had just got extensions the day before. And I'm like, man, those freaking extensions were expensive. Like, are you kidding me right now? But I didn't see it like, because I mean, if you know what extensions are, they're like on a little track. And I'm like, oh my God, like seriously, like I'm pretty sure the track is still in my head. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I was just like, son of a gun, man. Like I bought these expensive ass extensions, spent time cutting them, coloring them, installing them, all that. I'm like, they're gone now. They're messed up. As I was looking at that, I heard someone yell, oh my gosh, are you a doctor? And I'm like thinking, dang, that was really fast. Did I black out? Like, what's going on? Like, what a coincidence. Like, that's awesome. And I look over and I see him coming down into the embankment, like the little deep, hill that we're in. And I'm like thinking like, dang, that was fast. And he comes over to me and he's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And he had like this blonde, dirty blonde, beautiful curly blonde hair and these beautiful piercing blue eyes. And he had these dark blue scrubs on. And he got a blanket out of the trunk because on impact the trunk flew open and everything was everywhere and there was a blanket in there. And he pulled the blanket out. He lay down on the ground and he was just kind of holding my head and just saying, you're okay, because after my adrenaline started to wear down, I started panicking. And I remember just like looking at him, and the car's over on this side. And I'm just looking at him, and he has just like this ray of light just all around him. And he just like he just looked like an angel. And I'm like thinking like, nobody, everybody else tried talking to me, ambulance got there and everything. And I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like everybody made me even more anxious, panic more, freaked me out. And every time I looked at him, and he held my hand, and I remember he was like touching my stomach because I was pregnant at the time, and he was just like, I think I felt the baby move, you're fine, you're okay, like, and he just kept like talking to me and trying to calm me down. And I'm like, nothing else helped me besides that guy, that man that was just like sitting there trying to calm me down. And I remember laying down and just like looking over at the car, and I'm like, oh my God. Like I hadn't really looked at the car since I had gotten out. So I got out of the car, all that stuff happened in about 5 minutes has passed by, laid down everything, getting Aaliyah out of the car and everything. And the lady's holding Aaliyah, and she's standing right where I'm at, where I'm laying on the floor. And I remember just looking over, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, that's not going to be able to get fixed. Like it was a brand new car. It was a brand new car, and I totaled it. And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh my God, like Chris is going to be so pissed. And I'm like, crap. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like looking at Aaliyah, making sure she's okay. And she's just kind of like, how kids get when they just wake up and they're kind of like, just kind of not all there. And that's how she was. So I was like, is she okay? And I told the lady, is she okay? And she's like, yeah, she's fine. I already checked her out, everything. She didn't have no, cuts, broken bones, nothing. And I was like, thank God, because I was terrified that she was going to get hurt. And so my stomach is still burning at that time. And I remember Artesia, the little town between Roswell and Carlsbad, a little like community ambulance, I guess you would call that, came, and she was talking to me. She already had like her little bag and stuff, but she was more like those like EMT trucks instead of like an ambulance. So we were waiting for Roswell's ambulance to come and get me. So I get up off the ground because I'm like, I need to call Chris. I need to call my mom. Like I'm by myself here. Like what the hell just happened? I'm by myself. I don't know who these people are. Like I need to call my family. And so I get up to go find my phone, and they're like, no, 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 you need to lay down. You need to lay down. I'm like, no, I need to find my phone. I need to call my, my fiance, and I need to call my mom. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know what to do. And so I remember going over to the car, and in that car where you pull the door shut, the little handle, you can kind of stick a phone right there. And I remember I always kept my phone there. And I kept walking. I remember walking up to the car, and I'm like, I'm not going to freaking find my phone. We're so spoiled. We don't know numbers by heart anymore. We only know them out of our cell phone. And I'm like, oh my God, like seriously, like I'm not going to find it. And I remember opening the door, and the phone was still in the same spot, rolling 6 times, everything else flying out of my car. My motor and my battery flew into the field next to me. How did my phone stay right there? Everything came out of the car. Everything. How the hell did my phone just stay right there? I don't understand. And so I'm like, okay. And I couldn't, like, I was shaking. And at that time, the lady that was holding Aaliyah had walked over to me, and she's like, do you need help? Do you need help? And then she's like, oh, you just need to go lay down. I was like, please. And I gave her my phone. I'm like, please call my mom and tell her to call Chris. And my mom said that she was getting a phone call from me. This was all happening at like 8:30 in the morning. And my mom knew I wasn't already at school yet, because I usually would get there about, 9 o'clock. And she said that, later on, talking to her after the accident, she just already knew when that phone call was coming in that something happened. And she said when she got on the phone and she heard somebody else's voice that wasn't mine, she just lost it. So she calls her, whatever, and the lady gives me my phone back. And I remember going to lay back down on the ground because everybody was adamant that I lay down on the ground. And I kept thinking, okay, like I'm okay. I think I can work my phone. And I tried to call Chris. And at this time, he's working at the salt mines, and I'm like, he's not going to answer. What if he's underground? Like, what if he's like, he's in an area he doesn't have a service? Like, how am I going to call him? How am I going to let him know? And I remember I got a hold of him, and I'm like, hey, I got in an accident. And he's like, well, what kind of accident? And I'm like a really bad one. And he's like, well, how? He's like, oh, okay, I'm coming. And I think he thought meant like a fender bender, which later on he told me he thought that I just kind of like bumped into somebody, like a little accident like that. And I remember he called me back, and he's like, well, how bad is it? And I remember just like looking over at the car, and I'm like, it's really bad. And he was like, well, are you okay? And I'm like, I rolled the car. And he's like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I was like, can you just get here? The police are trying to, investigate or ask questions, interrogate me, whatever you want to call it. And I remember the ambulance got there. They put a neck brace around me, they put me on a stretcher, and they started pulling me out of the embankment, so up out of that ditch. And I remember coming up that, still kind of everything was like a blur a little bit. And I remember thinking like, oh, that guy with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, like, I want to tell him thank you and I appreciate him because he really gave me like that sense of peace. And he made me feel like, okay, he calmed me down. And I wanted to tell him thank you because he really like touched me in a way that it made the whole situation that much better because I almost felt like I knew him. And I was pulling him up, getting pulled out of the embankment and put into the ambulance. I'm like, wait, where's that guy at? And they're like, what guy? And I was like, the guy in the scrubs, the doctor. And they're like, there was no doctor here. Like the EMTs just got here. And I'm like, no, the guy with the curly blonde hair and the blue eyes, really nice with a doctor bag. He got here when I got out of the car, and I'm like trying to tell them because they're still pulling me up and taking me so I can get the hell out of there because they could see I'm pregnant. We need to get to the hospital to check me and Aaliyah out and the baby. And I'm just like, wait, like where is that guy? And they're like, there was nobody here. There was nobody here like that. And I'm like, yes, there was. And they're like, no, there wasn't. And I remember just being like, oh my God, like, whoa, like today, I think that was an angel, my guardian angel, my angel, whatever you want to call it. Because I don't think I don't think, no, I don't, not that I don't think, I know we probably shouldn't have not, survived that accident. We get to the hospital. And I remember thinking, like, where's my family at? And at the time, like now thinking back, I'm like, it takes them an hour to get there. And Chris was all the way at the salt mines, which was like 45 minutes to an hour out of Carlsbad. So he had to come into Carlsbad an hour and then another hour to Roswell. And so he had like a 2 hour drive or almost a 2 hour drive. And so I'm like thinking like, shit, I just want someone to get here. And so I remember getting pulled into, trauma, and they were right away hooking me up, doing things, all that stuff. And I remember my hand was just bloody, and I'm like, why does it hurt so bad? Like, why is it so bloody? And I still have, I mean, you won't be able to tell, but like I still have scars, and they're kind of like ugly. They almost look like I have warts on my fingers, but they're like, I don't know if you can really tell. You can kind of see it there, and then there's one right there, and there's one like in here. You can't see, but yeah. So I was like, "What's going on with my hand?" I remember they got like a warm bath and stuck my hand in it, and my hand was full of glass. And I remember having like that neck brace on me, and I'm like, "Can I take this off?" And they're like, "No, you can't take it off until you get a CT scan and get some X-rays done." And I'm like, "Okay, like whatever." And I remember they have, I guess like every hospital has like I don't know what you call them. This lady came in, she brought Aaliyah a little teddy bear and some coloring books, and she was like checking her out, talking to her, keeping her company while they were running tests on me and the baby and trying to see if we were okay. So I remember they pulled me to X-ray, and oh my God, that was terrible. That was terrible. It was so uncomfortable. Everything, they had to take picture, what do you call it? Everywhere that hurt. And so I'm like telling them, I don't know what hurts right now, but like the main thing that hurt was like my scalp and my hand, my stomach, and my shin, because I had messed up my entire shin. The front of it had got like a road rash from hitting the bottom of the dashboard. Getting pulled out of X-ray, and I walk in and I see my mom in there, and she's just crying, and I'm like, I'm fine, and like they're just crying and they're upset. I hadn't even looked at myself yet. I didn't even know what I looked like. And I'm like, oh my God, like what's going on? And I remember just keep looking at Aaliyah. I'm like, is she okay? Is she fine? They're like, yeah, she's good. She doesn't need X-ray. She has no broken bones. She's fine. She just has a little bit of redness that will turn into bruising from the car seat, the seatbelt. And I'm like, okay, I'd rather have that than anything else. Pain started to set in, and they checked the baby, gave me an ultrasound. Everything was perfectly fine. No tears in the placenta. Because whenever my mom was pregnant with me, she was about 4 months, 5 months, I think. She had an accident as well, head-on collision with a drunk driver. Drunk driver died, and she was pregnant with me. and she said that she had to be put on bed rest for, I don't know if it was the rest of her pregnancy or for a few months or so, because it had tore the placenta, like the bag. And so I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, like what if mine did? And everything was fine. We get out of there, we go home, all that stuff. Everything was good. And I ended up taking a month off of school. And I remember being so stressed out about it because I was thinking like, I'm not going to be able to finish beauty school before I have this baby. And that was my main goal, was having that baby after I graduate. And I'm like, I don't need to have her before I graduate, because if I have her while I'm still going to school, it's just going to make things so much worse with a newborn and a toddler. Like I was so stressed about it. So I took a month off to kind of recuperate and kind of heal and everything. My stomach, you could tell right across here, my collarbone, everything was bruised, or it was this way. It was bruised all along. My stomach was black. It was black and blue, mostly black, from the seatbelt. And I remember going to like checkups afterwards. I had to go like a few days after the accident and go to my OBGYN. And I told them I showed them the black, line across my stomach, and they're like, it's just from the seatbelt, from rubbing up against it and hitting it, and just, your stomach's really sensitive right now, but the baby's fine because they have so much cushioning and that fluid and everything's in there. She's fine. And I'm like, okay, good. Everything was good. And I remember like having gashes in my head. I feel like right in this crown area, like my hair's never been the same. The texture of it, like it's thinner there, all that stuff. And before I went in for the CT, I remember clipping out, because I had clip-in extensions, and I remember clipping them all out, and I told my mom, I was like, count them. There's like, I think there's like 14. I was like, there's like this many. I was like, make sure they're all there. And she's like, yeah, they're all here. And I'm like, do they look like they're like ripped or anything? And she's like, no, they look fine. And I'm like, oh my God, that hair that was on the floor was my hair. And later on, I found out it was my hair, and it was right here in the back. And like I said, my hair has never grown, and it'll grow to a certain length, like right here, and then it'll just get thinner and it'll break off. And I remember having gashes in my head, and I think it was from when the sunroof got caved in, because I'll insert another picture here of what the sunroof looked like, and it just kind of like caved in. And I think that's kind of like my hair probably was getting, stuck, like kind of like, when you get scissors and a ribbon and you kind of like pull it and it curls it. I think that's what it kind of did to my hair, and it basically like pulled my hair out and did some funky stuff to it. So I had to get like a massive haircut after that, like for at least up to a year and a half, 2 years. I think about a year and a half ago was the last time I did, but I used to pick glass out of my head. There used to be like my head would heal, and then all of a sudden I'd get like a pimple like on my head and be really sore and sharp to pain. And I would just kind of like, kind of mess with it and push on it, and I'd be pulling glass out. And I'm like, yeah, 3 years later, and I'm pulling glass out of it. This year's going to be the 5th anniversary. Today, as I'm posting this on September 2nd, it's going to be the anniversary of this car accident. And I'm pretty sure people probably get like tired of me talking about it. But I always thought I was never going to be the one to get in an accident like that. And I always thought that, I was invincible, and I'm like, I'm never going to get in an accident, like whatever. Like I've been traveling, commuting back and forth, for this long. I'm totally good. And it happened just like that. I didn't even know what was going to happen. I remember commuting every day on that highway and seeing accident after accident. I'm like, dang, like, I feel bad for those people. Like, God, take care of them, whatever's going on with them. I just pray for that family or whoever's in that accident, and thinking like, thank you, God, for it not being me. And then it ended up being me. After that, it changed my life completely. It gave me massive anxiety. I get panic attacks really easy. Certain triggers will give me like, I self-diagnosed myself as like I have PTSD from it. I haven't got diagnosed. I haven't really gone to the doctor about that specific type of issue. I thought it was just something that was like emotional distress or emotional like trauma or whatever. But yeah, I got massive anxiety from it. Little things will trigger it. Being in the car, certain things will trigger it. I'm severely thankful that me and my family, my kids, are still alive and we're still here, because even the police officer had told Chris when he talked to him in the hospital, he's like, you should be like putting X's on their face right now. Like they should be dead. It looked like a giant just came by and stomped on my car. And I'm just so thankful because God gave us another chance at life. It makes me really emotional to like think about that, because like we shouldn't be here. And if like like I said, when we caught air and we landed, the whole side of the car on the passenger side smashed. If it would have been the driver's side, we would have been gone. I would have been dead. I would have been gone. And it's really scary to like think of that, because it's like, whoa, that was like a near death experience. And then, and I don't care what anybody says, I saw an angel. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's there. So a couple weeks had went by, we were in Roswell, and I even remember a couple weeks had went by, and we were in Roswell because that's where my doctor was at, and I was getting another checkup to make sure everything was still going okay after the accident. And Aaliyah, still 3 years old, sitting in the back seat, and she's like, "I saw Jesus," and I'm like, and we're like, "What? Like, what is she talking about?" Like, I'm just trying to like figure out what she's talking about. And she's like, "No, like, remember when you hit the tractor? Jesus was holding me in the back the whole time." And I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. That was crazy. Every day I apply my life, I take the extra steps to make sure everybody's buckled in, because we were all buckled in. And if it wasn't for being buckled in as well, we would have flew out of that car. And so I always say to buckle up, always be safe, always pay attention to your surroundings. And, don't always be in a hurry to go somewhere. Don't, take things for granted. Don't take your family for granted. Don't take things for granted that you have, because it could be ripped from you in a matter of seconds and you don't even know when it's coming. Nothing gives you a warning. I didn't have a warning. Thought this would be appropriate just because the anniversary is on, because right now, today it's the 31st, and September 2nd's in a couple of days, and I want to post it on that day. I hope you guys liked this video. Give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe down below. Hit that bell notification, and when you hit that bell notification, make sure you mark it to all, so that way you get all of the notifications for whenever I post a video. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.